I'm not afraid to blow deer out of state because I'm only going to be there for a week. It's a lot easier to break down. And at least for us in Michigan, you know how the pressure is here. It's pretty bad.
And that's one benefit of public land over private, because in private, you're just locked in.
For me, I'd rather walk 5 or 6 pieces and actually find one worth hunting versus just slowly creeping in on a spot.
And until you find that, it's like if you choose to hunt somewhere, it's typically a low odds hunt. It's almost a waste of time. It's almost like it'd be better to just...
Welcome to Deer IQ, here to help you hunt smarter, elevate your approach, and consistently tag exceptional whitetail. Whether you're just starting out or a longtime hunter targeting mature bucks, this is your edge. We bring you proven tactics, expert insights, and unfiltered conversations with high-level hunters who just get it done. Guiding you through it all is veteran hunter and strategist Adam Lewis, helping you spot what others miss, fine-tune your focus, and unlock your full hunting potential. So let's raise your deer IQ. Here's your host, Adam Lewis.
Hey, I'm Adam, and in this episode of the Deer IQ podcast, we wrap up our series on public land hunting details that make the difference, looking at some very practical access strategies. We talk about if you should consider the now popular tactic of using a boat for access, and exactly when this works and when it doesn't, the truth about swamp access for finding big bucks, out-of-state short versus long trips, the psychology, and the mindsets that lead to more success, pre-scouting versus going in blind and hunting, which is better and why, and a major trap most new public land hunters fall into you definitely want to avoid. So if you are new to public land hunting or struggle with access or dialing in good spots, this is an episode for you. And I want to let you know we have a few spots left in the upcoming Deer IQ Advanced Coach Small Group starting soon. This program is designed for serious hunters ready to zero in on the exact skills needed to elevate their success. Over 12 bi-weekly virtual sessions, we dive deep into our proven 6-step framework that any hunter can apply to become a far more consistent big buck killer. Each session includes intensive instruction, immediately actionable strategies, and personalized coaching tailored to every member's unique hunting situation. These 12 sessions give you the tools to transform your hunting approach, unlock your full potential as a hunter, and reach that next level now, without wasting years on trial and error. Register below before the remaining spots are gone. Don't miss this transformational Deer IQ Coach Small Group experience. Okay, and now let's get to this high IQ podcast on public land access strategies with guest Gage Herriman. All right, I'm here with Gage Herriman. He is a big public land hunter. Just found out from talking with him, he's actually local here. This has happened me twice in the last few weeks interviewing public land hunters. So it must be a Michigan thing, but Gage, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, glad you could join. And we're in a series here talking about public land hunting. And I saw on social media you do a lot of public land hunting in some interesting ways. And so to dig into that would be, I guess the goal of this podcast, and really looking at different ways that guys can approach public land hunting, excuse me, and have success and maybe get away from other hunters. But we'll get into all that stuff and how you do it in particular, but let's start with, if we can just get a background of you, how long you've been hunting, the type of places you hunt, and I guess just your brief background of you and your hunting experience.
Yeah, so basically been hunting about as long as I can remember with my dad growing up. He always had private leases that we hunted, so it was always like small pieces. And grew up always just in the woods, doing whatever, shooting squirrels, shooting birds, everything. And eventually got into deer hunting with him and just sitting ladder stands and box blinds over bait, basically the Michigan classic there growing up. And eventually from there started working into more like on those leases and stuff. We started taking it a little bit more serious and like trying to get bigger deer. We did the whole food plots and all that type of stuff in the beginning. And eventually through like YouTube and everything like that, I ran across the Hunting Beast and his style of hunting and started slowly adapting like the mobile type hunting, which I mean, I basically fell in love with right off the bat. My dad loved it too. And from there, we started going out of state and started traveling all around Michigan. And it was just a downward or upward spiral that from there going just about anywhere we could go. So yeah.
Gotcha. And how old are you?
24.
All right. So young guy getting into that. And I see you also do a lot of like waterfowl hunting.
Oh yeah. Anything that's in hunting season, I'm usually going after it.
Okay. So what type of, what are you looking for when you hunt public land? Like what have you settled in? It looks to me like you use a lot of boat access and type things. So what are you looking for and why do you choose your, particular method?
Yeah. So basically, I strictly hunt swamps for the most part. If you put me in hill terrain, I'd have no clue where to even start. So that swamps, it's just been the easiest for me to narrow them down because the sign's just so much more like when you're walking through the woods and through the swamp, you can just see it. And I mean, it just pops right out. Where the big woods, it's kind of like you can find all that sign and the deer sometimes aren't there or they're there at the night. And the swamps, I mean, they're right there, and it's a lot easier to break down. And at least for us in Michigan, you know how the pressure is here. It's pretty bad. So the swamps, you can get away from people, where a lot of the hardwood stuff just gets smoked all season by every type of hunter there is: squirrel, raccoon, deer, turkey, everything. They're hitting it hard.
So do you like how much of the time would you say you use a boat to access?
The boat. So I started doing the boat right off the bat, basically, because Michigan, as you know, we have so much water that basically all the public land butts up to some type of water source, whether it's a river or a lake or anything like that. So I'd say in Michigan, a lot of the times I started hunting with the boat a lot, but I've started kind of getting away from it a little bit because a lot of times you end up getting basically right back into the places that people are walking into from the private.
Mm.
So I kind of started backpedaling on that a little bit as of recently, but I have used it a lot in the past to get on the big bucks. And once you get back there and you're away from everybody, it really opens up a lot of opportunities.
What, not to give away your spots here because I'm in the same area, but what are you typically looking for? Are you looking for, because something I've noticed, and I preach this a lot, is depending on your area, sometimes it's hard to get away from guys because the area is not big enough, right?
Yeah.
Like kind of what you're saying, right? You get back in a spot and then you might run into guys. There's also been for years a lot of the stuff out there, whether it be, hunting bee stuff. John Eberhard, he's been on podcasts a lot. Been preaching, going deep in these areas. And so a lot of people do it, right? Yeah. And so is there a particular, other than swamps, is there a particular size you're looking for or something that will tell you, hey, if I go in here with a boat or whatever, a canoe or something like that, that I have a better chance of getting away from anybody? Is there like any criteria, I guess, that you use?
Yeah. So that I use that both for Michigan and for out of state. But basically what you said is, I mean, people are definitely catching on to the boat access. It's not like you can just pull up a boat and basically find a good spot anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, usually what I look for is on maps, it's got to be like some type of not big chunk of public, but big chunk of private surrounding it. Like if you get to one of them spots on the boat access where it's a small little piece and there's about 20, 30 houses backing up to it worth like 5-10 acres. I'm sure you've seen it on maps where they have that,
Mm-hmm.
where there's little pieces all backed up to it. Those guys are usually like just all walking. They're usually hunters. So they're walking back onto that public and it's getting smoked. Where if you find some of them public pieces that maybe have like 2 or 3 property owners around the whole outside of it, those usually for me have been pretty good as far as there's just not people getting back to it, because then the only way you can access it is from a boat, where
Mm-hmm.
usually all them guys walking in back into there, and it just basically makes it just like any general public area. So that's one of the main things is bigger private pieces around the public has helped me a lot.
So some boat access. So do you use I'm guessing saddle or something like that, a small lock on, or do you do ground hunting? Like, what does that look like for you? Once you find a spot, let's say that looks like something that would fit the bill. Like
Yeah.
what do your tactics look like, I guess?
Yeah. So I've tried basically just about everything. I've started with the climber. I really only gave that like half a season, and I was like, I can't be taking this back in those places. Like, it's just not going to work. So then I ended up doing a lone wolf, the original lone wolf hang on. I was like Alpha 2.0. And that worked good for a while. I used that for like 2 or 3 years. I still use that sometimes later in the season when I got a bunch of clothes on. I use my saddle and my stand. But as of recently, the last like 4 or 5 years, I've only used my saddle. It's definitely a game changer doing that. You can just throw everything in a backpack, strap your sticks on the outside, and go where you don't have to worry about all the thick stuff on the back, the climber, the sticks catching everything. Like, you can throw that on and you're gone.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people are going to those, right?
Yeah.
For that reason. And I was very similar when I started hunting public, and I've been doing it a lot for the last 15 years. And so I started with just a regular stand, stick and stand, which is not mobile at all. And then I went to a climber, and then I went to a better climber. And so it's a progression I think guys typically go through because they realize that climbers are okay, but in these areas you get to them, like you have limited trees. There's not that many trees you can find that you can actually climb with a climber. And then you start doing crazy stuff like, and I admit I've done the stuff where you climb up part way, you undo the climber to go over a limb, and you're doing this pretty shady, dangerous stuff, in the middle of nowhere. And so the sticks become very advantageous in a small stand or a saddle or something like that. All right. So when you get back in these areas, like you talk about sign, things like that, what is it that I guess you look for, or that tells you like, hey, I'm going to set up here versus there versus, I guess, moving on to a different spot? Yeah. Break that down a bit. For, I guess, once you get into a spot.
Spots, yeah. So, basically, like my, I guess, system, I would say for me that's been working the last few years is usually I start out like the first year putting a camera on the spot and narrowing down based on spring scouting. Based on that, I put a trail camera out, and I kind of just let that go the whole year. I might hunt it 1 or 2 times. I don't really hunt there that much, and usually after seasons when I check it. And then that's when I start deep diving into the piece and actually like breaking down if there's a nice buck on camera, at least one throughout the season. I go through and break down all that sign and try to figure out like where he's coming from, where he's going, where the other hunters at, all that type of stuff. So the camera really does help because it lets you know if one's there or not. And then for that year, usually the next year when I hunt it, I'll kind of break it down as far as I've been in season scouting a lot. So when you go into them pieces, I'm checking for fresh rubs, fresh scrapes. And basically if they don't have those, I just keep moving. A lot of times I feel like I'm probably walking right by deer and leaving pieces like not completely turned over. But for me, I'd rather walk 5 or 6 pieces and actually find one worth hunting versus just slowly creeping in on a spot and then throwing a bunch of sits at it and figuring out that it doesn't have a buck on it.
Yeah. So basically you're using historic data from the year before to make decisions about the next year. If a buck, and some of that's a risk maybe, right? Because if you, let's say, get a buck on camera, unless you're sure he lived through, I guess, you don't know. So then you use that current sign of that year to maybe confirm that, right? That like, okay, I know this from last year, and then this year I'm seeing this. That's like a double confirmation that this might be a spot I can, have success at. Would that?
No, yeah, that's
kinda...
I've had it too, where I've had those bucks on camera. The one year I had a really nice buck on camera, and I'm like, man, I think he made it. Like, I didn't get pictures of him after season, but I'm like, there's no way somebody shot him at the tail end of gun season.
Mm-hmm.
And I never saw that buck again. So I basically wasted my time that whole next year, at least the first few sits, trying to find them. But eventually the sign just dried up, and I still ran that camera there the whole year, and it was confirmed that he was no longer alive.
Yeah, it amazes me. Both things amaze me. It amazes me that bucks make it past like 2 years old in Michigan with some of the pressure in these areas, and a decent amount do. That amazes me, but it also amazes me that like how they just can disappear and like they're just gone, forever, and with things like that. So, and the speed thing too. That's one thing where I would say, and we've all probably been there, right? Where we spend a big chunk of our season hunting a deer that maybe is not living where we're hunting, or is possibly dead, or that just is unkillable where we're trying to hunt.
Yeah, that's they're unkillable where you're trying to hunt, because I tried out for so long.
Yeah, and that's one benefit of public land over private, because in private you're just locked in. Like you're locked into these boundaries, and if he is not making his home where he'll daylight in that section, your little piece, then it's really hard to make that happen. Where in public you can move, depending on how big the piece is, right? You can move to try to find that area where a particular buck is going to be active in daylight. Do you hunt for particular deer, or do you hunt based on criteria?
A little bit of both. I started getting, like, the last 2 years, I started really like focusing in on certain deer. Like, I would do the whole summer scouting, the glassing. I'd find a nice buck, then I'd put my cameras up, and then I'd try getting on them. And I did that for those 2 years, and I actually did get, like, I think it was 2 of them that I actually went after, which isn't that good of odds compared to how many I saw. But I ended up getting 2 of them. But as of recently, I've really just been which I think out of state hunting is what kind of made me adapt to it. But I've just read sign, and I've just went as it goes during the season. I do the summer scouting, but a lot of times I don't even end up hunting those spots. I just do it for fun, just to glass deer and have something to do during the summer. But yeah, the last year I've really just been focusing in on just reading sign. And I mean, a lot of times I've never even seen those deer before. So I just go for an age class. I mean, if it gets me excited, it's a 2.5, 3.5-year-old buck. Usually I'm letting it go.
Yeah. And for me, so I hunt obviously in Michigan a lot. I hunt in Ohio as well, and I've hunted other states, right? But as a teacher, it's hard for me to take time off. I really just have weekends here and there and holidays, but most of your holidays are not during hunting season. So it gets tough to put in a ton of time outside of, the state. Right. But so in Michigan, it's more for me on public land. It is just that as a criteria, right? Because I've known of deer, and those deer disappear, and it takes a lot on public land in a high pressure state to just focus on one deer, right? And so I've done the same thing where you get to like, okay, this is my standard, and you might up your standards year after year after year. But within a realm of reality, like for me, it's a 3.5-year-old deer or more, right, in Michigan, and that's a pretty decent buck for here. Oh, yeah. Other states, it's going to be different, right? But it keeps you from, for me, it keeps me from focusing on a deer that might not even exist after the youth season, right? Because up here, in other states are probably different, but we have a youth season before bow season starts, right? So a lot of these deer, the decent bucks, might get shot, and if you don't know that, and you're trying to hunt a deer that's already dead, that you're wasting time. And the season isn't long. The best days of season go by quick. So
every hunter has blind spots and weaknesses holding them back. What are yours? The Deer IQ Test 360 is our complete hunting strategy and skills assessment, designed to uncover the holes in your approach, fix them fast, and refocus your efforts on exactly what gets results. It's quick, insightful, and delivers personalized suggestions based on your unique hunter profile. If you want to consistently tag better whitetail, the Deer IQ Test 360 is where to start. Take it now, linked below or at deeriq.com.
Okay, and here's your high IQ moment. Do you follow the crowd or go off the data in front of you? It's easy to hear popular public land hunters saying things like hunt the swamps or hunt right next to the parking lot, but to blindly do either of these may or may not work and isn't what we'd call high IQ. A smart hunter reads the exact situation, what other hunters are actually doing, the terrain, the cover, and deer sign, and comes up with a plan based on that for a specific area. Beware of following exact cookie cutter or blanket statements you hear thrown around online, and learn to read the room exactly where you hunt and then apply proven principles for your hunting situation. That's the smart way we suggest here at Deer IQ, and something to think about. And if you want help doing that, see below about getting a public land analysis, which is a service we offer. Okay, and now back to the podcast. So here you do more scouting here. You mentioned like off-season scouting, right? Like in spring, summer. Out of state, is it more just like you show up and go? Like, what does that look like for you hunting public land out of state?
Yeah, usually it's more of the show up and go, basically, like you said. Usually start by picking a spot on the maps that looks good. Basically the same thing as Michigan. I'm looking for pieces that are hard to access, whether it means boat, whether it means a long walk, or a combination of both, which usually ends up being the best spots. And from there, once I find it on maps, kind of just really deep dive into it, try to find like actual pinch points in the swamps and type of like terrain that I'm looking for. And I've dropped some pins and everything. So that way, when I get there, I have all my pins marked and I'm not having to scroll through the maps all day trying to figure out where I'm going to go. Like I already know the spots I'm checking. So then once I get there, obviously I'm looking for fresh sign right off the bat. And I'm not afraid to blow deer out out of state, because I'm only going to be there for a week and I'm not worried about scaring these deer out. Because a lot of times I've learned if they live there, like if that's their bed or if that's where their bedding area, you can kick them out of there on public land, and they're so used to that by how many people are walking through those areas that they'll be right back in there within a few days. And then usually you can set up right on them. So once I get in those areas, I really see that sign that's like, okay, like I'm hunting here. Like scrapes just tore right up, fresh tracks in it, no leaves in the scrape at all, fresh rubs, shavings on the leaves. That's like I'm usually setting up right there. And it's one of those things that the more you do it and the more you find those spots, like when you see that sign, you know. It's hard to explain, but once you've seen it and you've hunted it and you've had success at those spots, when you see it again, you know that that's where you got to be.
Well, yeah, it's fresh sign, right? Like understanding what fresh sign is. And I think you make a good point there where you maybe blow out a deer, right? I have found that I prefer to scout, and then there's two ways to go about it, I guess. You can scout, hunt your way in, and just you have all your stuff, you're scouting on the way in, you find a spot, you set up and hunt, right?
Yeah.
I actually prefer to scout separate of hunting. So I'm not like committing to a spot, I'm scouting. And that way, if you do bump something and it's still in the area, it has a chance to know you also left. And so that way, when you come back in, if you're really, stealthy about it, they might think you've actually gone and, not know that you came back to hunt them. So for me, that is something that I've had success with. I think is a good tactic, but you can do both ways, right?
No, I do the same thing as you. I'm not one of the people that like scouts with their bag on their back and like my stand and my bow. I rarely ever take my bow when I'm scouting. As bad as that, I mean, it might come and bite me later eventually, but I almost never do. It just doesn't seem worth it to me. I mean, yeah, I might have it off chance of running into something that's shootable, but
during the rut, I think during the rut is the only time I would for sure have the bow.
yeah, I still don't. I haven't
Really?
I haven't had it bite me yet. I know one of these years it's going.
It will.
I'm gonna start carrying it again.
Yeah, I mean, but it's for me again. It's only during the rut, like because deer can literally just run over you, and I've had that before. And it's like, shoot, if I had my bow, but okay, all right. So you do that, and it's some people might say that, well, and a lot of out-of-staters, I'll just say this, there's people coming to their states now, much more than used to hunt public land, right? And they get upset about that and stuff, and blowing things out and whatnot. So I think it is what it is, right? You're not trying to trounce an area, you're not trying to mess something up for somebody else, but the reality is you have a short amount of time. The speed scouting idea is something I also do, because you can't look at a map. You can look at a map and say, these areas look good for me to check, like you're saying, right? I'm going to drop some pins. I did that in Missouri a few years ago, and I had weeks of work, based on calls I made, based on maps and pins I dropped, right? But those were areas to start. I didn't know what it was going to be like when I got there.
Yeah.
And so without checking it out, it doesn't make sense to commit to a spot, right? You can't see what's actually there. You have guesses, right, because of the map and things like this. But for example, when I got to Missouri, the first spot I wanted to look was there's private fields of ag next to public, and all the private was plowed. I thought it might be like some corn or at least something there, and there was just dirt, so it's like there's no way to know that unless you have somebody on the ground there. So not committing right off the bat and covering a lot of ground is really a good tactic, so you can really narrow it down. How long of a hunts do you guys take when you go out of state typically?
We've done everything from short hunts, like there's just 3 or 4 day trips, make it a long weekend. And then we've also done the week and a half trips. Surprisingly enough, I usually do a lot better on the 4 day trips, even though it seems like you do a lot better on the longer trips. But I think it's just because I go in more with a mindset of like, I gotta get it done, and I gotta go here. I gotta find them. Where on the week trips, you're kind of easing into stuff, you're backing off, you're doing observation sits, and just not taking it as strict.
So you're being much more aggressive on the short hunts, I guess.
And I feel it's not even like consciously that I'm doing it. It's just like consciously that I don't even think about it. It's just naturally I'm just going. Me and all my buddies, I mean, we all have better success on the shorter trips than we do the longer trips.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Something about beforehand, like, all right, like this week trip, we're gonna go in like we would a 4 day trip, and we never end up doing it. We're gonna back off. My buddies can see what's popping out of the public land woods and all that type of stuff. So
yeah, that's interesting. Just a different mentality about it. It's and how that affects things. That is interesting to think about. As you go into these hunts, and 3 to 4 days can be enough, right? Like, so you aren't able to do a bunch of scouting. I spend like 2 days scouting when you do that.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're not. So you're basically going in, not with your stand on your back, but I mean, I'll go in the mornings or the first day I get there, and I'll just walk as many pieces as I can and try to find the fresh stuff. And I'll basically set up on it. If it's fresh enough and I didn't completely blow it out, I'll hunt it that same night if it's good enough.
Yeah.
And I've had that work plenty of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then where you're hunting, and I talk about this a lot, what I call a surgical hunt, right? You have all this stuff stacked in your favor. You have intel to tell you that there's a high odds of if you hunt there, right?
Yeah.
And until you find that, it's like if you choose to hunt somewhere, it's typically a low odds hunt. It's almost a waste of time. It's almost like it'd be better to just spend it scouting some more until you find that hot, fresh sign that you're looking for, right? Um, is there anything that, as you've been doing this, that uh, when you first started doing it, that maybe threw you off track, or that was maybe a mistake that you've learned from in this process?
Um, yeah, I mean, I'd say basically what we were talking about earlier about just being afraid of bumping deer. Like you
Mm.
really just can't be afraid of bumping deer. You're going to do it. They get bumped all the time. You might not think they do, but they do. There's people getting
Hmm.
back there. There's people walking back there, and you can't be afraid to bump them. You really can't.
Interesting. What's a story? So good, bad, otherwise. What's a story that you can share to, like, I guess, put some of these pieces together, um, of some of these, tactics that you use and have had success with? Maybe one of those short hunts or something.
Yeah. So for home or for out of state?
Uh, you pick.
So I'll do one for home for now. It was that
Okay.
there, my favorite buck I've shot. So I originally started hunting that piece. It was far away from home. It was it was like hour and 50-minute drive. So it was not close to home at all. But I had to get up there and I wanted to get to better ground up north where basically it's remote, big woods, and there's not a lot of people. So I started hunting up there. And as soon as I got up there, I basically saw that there was just sign, a really big sign, and I knew there was a nice buck living in there. Hunted there that whole year. I saw that buck 2 different times. I had cameras in there. Saw him basically every other night on camera when I was, at least when I pulled the card after the fact. And so he was living right in there. Didn't end up getting him that year. So fast forward to the next year, and that I actually ended up getting him. I broke out down all that sign during the off season, and basically on my cameras, I was figuring out which way he was coming from and which way he was going at night. And then during the off season scouting, I broke that all down and followed down his trails, found his rub lines and everything, and walked it back to where I thought he was bedding. And I had a pretty good idea going into season. It was October 1st. I was like, I think I know where this buck's at, and I'm just going to go right in on him the first sit, which a lot of people probably wouldn't do. And even my buddy was like, dude, you got to give him a break. Like at least go do an observation sit first. Like you can't just go set up right on him. And, but so I set up right on him that night, right where I thought he was going to come out. And, right at night fall, basically it was about 30 minutes before dark. I had a really nice 8-point come in, and I ended up passing him. He was a little bit far, but I did pass him. Then I had another nice buck come out, and they ended up coming up working behind me in the swamp. And I looked in front of me, and above the swamp line, I saw a tree just thrashing back and forth. And I'm like, oh, that's got to be a nice one. And he slowly started creeping out, and he popped out of the swamp, and I just saw the swamp grass moving as he was coming through. And then I finally saw his antlers pop through. And I was like, oh, he's coming right down the same line as all those bucks, and he's going to be right underneath of me. And he ended up walking right into, it was like 8 yards right underneath me, thrashed a tree right underneath me. I couldn't get a shot off because there's a bunch of branches right there, and ended up smoking them. And that was when everything came together, because it was when I kind of first started mobile hunting. So I didn't know exactly what I was doing, but it was the first time the whole puzzle came together, and on a big one.
That's pretty cool. So a lot of, I guess, history, I guess, scouting of this particular deer, and then putting the pieces together. And he basically repeated what he'd been doing, right?
Oh yeah, that's basically the off-season scouting and the cameras was what from the last year is what ended
Yeah.
up just giving away right where he was at. And luckily he did survive, and he was there the next year.
Yeah. Yeah. And if they know a place that's safe, logic would say, well, that'd be a good bet, if they haven't been hunted there or pressured or had a negative, I guess, experience. What about an out of state hunt?
Yeah, I guess I could do the one from this year. So this is our third year going back to Ohio this year. And we kind of finally started like narrowing down where we were at. The first year was we were hunting a bunch of different pieces, trying to figure out where we wanted to hunt. And the second year, we got one, 2 out of 3 of us got a buck the first year. So we did good. And the next year we hunted the same area, but kind of narrowed down like specific pieces that we wanted to hunt. And we all 3 got bucks that year. And then the next year we went back, which was this year, and basically went in aggressive the first trip. And we were there for a week. There's 4 of us, and my buddy ended up shooting one, but I hunted the whole week hard, did everything that I normally do. I mean, just pushing into the areas, trying to find the bucks, and I just didn't really get on them. I saw a few, but just nothing that was close enough to shoot. And then so I went back for a 4-day trip, which works out good usually for me. And me and my buddy were there, and I was using the boat access, and we split our separate ways that night because we really weren't seeing anything. We were like, we gotta split up now and try to find the deer, because obviously we aren't where they're at. And pulled up to a little peninsula spot on the river area we were hunting, and got off the boat about 10 steps, and I just saw deer trails coming off the thing into the water to drink. And I was like, oh, this looks pretty good. And as I kept walking, there was just a huge rub. And I was like, oh, this is probably a spot I'm going to want to hunt. So I just kept moving up, and I was planning on doing some calling because it was midday. I shot him and ended up shooting him at like 12. So it was midday. I was just moving around, and started rattling and grunting on the little peninsula edge there, and didn't really expect it to work. And sure enough, the buck stood up at like 100 yards right out of the little swamp grass and ended up coming right down to me, and came into about 10 yards, turned broadside, and shot him right there. And
Wow.
he ran 20 yards and died right in front of me. So that was about as good as it could go there. And that,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have split up, because we would have never ended up hunting that spot.
Yeah. So when do you go out of state? What time of year are you?
Rut.
You're going rut. Yeah.
Last week of October, first week of November is typically, I mean, if you go to any Midwestern state that time of year, you're going to be running into some deer.
So what are a few takeaways, that, and, as you're getting more into this, you're still a pretty young guy, right?
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure there's a lot that you will learn too, that you've already learned and, will learn, but what are a couple of things that you could share to say like, yeah, these are some key takeaways, some key things I've learned that really helped me, that might help somebody else that's struggling or just getting into this style of public land hunting?
Yeah. Basically be willing to move. You can't be stuck on a spot. For a long time, I would be stuck on certain areas because they were good in the past. Where if a lot of times like when other people are scouting those areas other than you. So if that sign's there for 2 or 3 years and that spot's really good for that time, people are going to catch on to that. And eventually it's not going to be good anymore. There's going to be too many people hunting it. So I've noticed spots goes in cycles, basically, where they're good for a few years, and then they'll just get overrun with people because everybody's seeing those buck rubs, everyone's seeing those scrapes, the word's getting out, everybody starts hunting them. So then basically going back to those spots a few years after is usually when I've found them to be good. So being willing to move. A lot of times I feel like people they get used to hunting the same areas and the same trees. They already got those trees prepped. They know the area, and they just like hunting those spots. So that's one thing. Other than that, I mean, just don't be afraid to mess up. A lot of people I feel like are just they're so scared to like not do the right thing that they don't end up doing anything. Like okay to make a mistake. Like, I mean, if you rattle and grunt at that deer and he comes in and then he ends up getting spooked, like it's not the end of the world. If you didn't do it, somebody else was going to do it. It's a public land. So you can't be afraid to mess up, basically.
Yeah. And every time you do something like that, you learn something.
Yeah. That's
but if you didn't do it, then you really can't learn something. No. And that's a huge one too. It must be, human psychology. We get, I guess, emotionally attached to locations because of past memory or experience, right? So we romanticize, I guess, a spot. And this is where guys hunt the same spots over and over and over again, year after year after year for 20 years, right? And they shot one buck there like 20 years ago, and they ignored that the landscape has changed, the woods has changed, and developed, and people hunting around in different areas have changed. Like everything has changed except them, right? And they just haven't adapted at all. But it's a rut that a lot of people get into. So that's one thing that mobile hunting allows you to do better is easily move, right?
Yeah.
And when, it is easier to have a preset, right?
Oh yeah.
But, and putting stuff up and taking it down every time is difficult. But when you do that, it at least forces you every time to potentially be in a new spot or think about it at least, right? Because you have no attachment to a specific spot or tree or whatever, but something to think about. Well, Gage, I think we'll wrap up here, but appreciate you sharing some of these things with public land hunting. And tell us where people can find you. So if they want to follow you, things like that, where can they connect with you?
Yeah. So basically, I have an Instagram. It's Great Lakes Outdoorsman, and then I post mainly everything on there. I don't really do Facebook at all. And then I have a YouTube, same thing, Great Lakes Outdoorsman. I've been trying to film a little bit more of my hunts. I've struggled in that in the past because you know how it is. You don't want to be taking camera gear and stuff out every single time, but I've gotten better about it. So I've done about 5 or 6 videos now. 2 or 3 of them are deer. So yeah, that's the best way to find me. YouTube and Instagram, Great Lakes Outdoorsman.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on. All right, here are your high IQ takeaways and challenges. Do you let fear keep you from trying new things, as Gage said? That's an enemy of growth. So write down a couple new things you will try this year or next year that will expand your hunting experiences and therefore really shorten your growth timeline. Don't be afraid to do new things. Okay, and next time we dive into a 2-part episode on finding exact stand locations for big bucks. I mean, the specific spot. How do you do that? It's with guest Bobby Worthington, who has written several books on this exact subject. It's a great episode, really high IQ. You won't want to miss that, and I'll see you then.